Gary was very keen to be here tonight, but he has been called away to a slightly urgent personal matter, so he sends his apology this evening. Second thing I'd like to do, if I may, is ask you to help me thank and recognise Andrea. Andrea does about 40 events a year and does a fabulous job of introducing other people to introduce people. And we never get a chance to say thank you to Andrea, but so could you help me tonight and say thank you? Thank you, Andrea. We like to think of Louise as part of the wider AIMWA family because although she has her own consulting and training business, she does do a lot of work for the Institute here. So we're delighted to have her here this evening and have her present to you and give you a bit of a snapshot of Louise's talents. She's driven by curiosity and about how we connect and what motivates our behaviour. She has over 20 years' experience in professional development as an adult learning specialist with degrees in psychology and learning and development and several tertiary qualifications in training. She has worked with all aspects of leadership and interpersonal relationships across every sector in a range of industries, including the resources sector, engineering, mining, airlines, banks, insurance, government, and the not-for-profit sector. But rather than have me tell you about Louise's strengths and talents, I thought I'd share with you some of the feedback that we've received from recent courses that Louise has delivered, and hear the feedback from participants, which capture it really, really well. I picked out little ones, Louise, I promise. Louise is an excellent presenter. She was very knowledgeable and has some great ideas. I enjoyed the structure of the course and the clear objectives, said another person. This course has given me a lot of insight about myself and how I behave, and how I may need to improve my confidence and communication skills at work and in my personal life. And the last one, and my personal favourite, the facilitator, Louise, was excellent, open, honest, engaging, friendly, and vulnerable. I couldn't say it better. Please welcome Louise.
Thank you very much, Sean and Andrea, and it is a real honour to be here. Thank you for that. I'm going to make a start by asking you to do something for me. All in? Yeah. All right, what I want you to do is I want you to think about chocolate cake. Chocolate cake. So I want you to think about your favourite kind of chocolate cake, what it looks like. How chocolatey do you like your chocolate cake? Do you like it layered? Do you like it light and fluffy? Do you like it dense? What shape is it? Is it square? Is it a wedge? Is it a circle? What are the main ingredients? So thinking about your favourite kind of chocolate cake, and if you don't like chocolate cake, think of a different kind of cake, that's fine too. We're going to use that during the rest of the evening. So thinking of your favourite chocolate cake, can I get you to turn to a neighbour and share with them 3 things about your chocolate cake? Just 3 things. What makes you want that kind of chocolate cake? Describe your favourite kind to your neighbour. You've got 1 minute. This means to you. When I ask you to describe chocolate cake, what were some of the descriptions that you came out with? So can I hear from this side of the room? Some of the things that you came up with your partner. Chocolate cake.
Light and fluffy.
Light and fluffy. Somebody else has that. Homemade. What else have we got? Down this end of the room.
Dark. Yes.
Dark. Okay, did anybody go for really dense, heavy? Who's that? Hands up, dense and heavy. All right. Would you be upset if you ordered a chocolate cake and you got a light and fluffy one?
Yes.
All right. How many of you decided you wanted dark chocolate? How many went for maybe white chocolate? Any white chocolate in the room? All right. Did anybody go for any strange, not strange ingredients, but ingredients that may not be so common? What did you go for, Jill?
A raspberry Kool-Aid.
Oh, very nice. So you'd be very disappointed if somebody gave you one without one?
It's not the same.
Okay, lovely. I asked this question the other day and somebody shouted out beetroot. I've got to try that. I want to try that one yet. All right, the reason I asked you about chocolate cake is it is quite a common item. In this culture, chocolate cake is talked about quite frequently. When people say they want some chocolate cake, you usually think you've got an idea of what they're talking about. Unfortunately, that's not true. So when I was looking at the description of communicate, the definition of the word is to make common, and unfortunately we don't. We assume people know what we mean, especially when we're talking about everyday items. So what I want to do with you today is go through 10 areas that I think are good to refresh on, just to sort of think about your communication, because I believe we can always improve ourselves. So I'd like you to think about any areas that you could maybe polish up and refine to do with communication. This world is a very noisy place, and the generation that we live in has never had the amount of noise that goes on in previous generations. We get noise coming at us 24 hours a day. And what I'm talking about is the constant interruptions, people trying to get your attention, people trying to get your time. Whether it's your mobile device, whether it's emails, whether it's people shouting at you. There's a whole industry of people in marketing that are spending millions of dollars in trying to get your attention. And our attention span is getting shorter and shorter. People are expected to do more and more, and our world has got more intricate and more complex with being on a much more international platform. There's completely different interpretations of how things might be, cross-cultural differences, and things get misunderstood very easily. The thing is with communication, we spend a lot of our day doing it, about 80%, but we don't always do it the best way. And some of the costs to that is relationships that get jeopardised, they put under stress, frustration, we get people doing the job a different way to what we expected, we get rework, and it costs industry and relationships a lot of money. So I'm going to start off with the first tip of what I think is the most important one, probably, to do with communication. And as I go through it, I want you to give yourself a bit of an audit, a bit of a check. So the first thing that I want to talk about is first impressions. There's lots of sayings and lots of quotes about first impressions, and there's a lot of kind of, I don't know how to describe it. Well, let me ask you this question. How long does it take to form a first impression? Have a quick chat with the person next to you and just say how long you think. What's your number? How long would it take to form a first impression? There's been a recent study in America where they came out with something, I think it was something like 7 out of 10 people make up their mind about you before you even say anything. And I've been doing a bit of research on what studies are showing now, and they're saying it's actually milliseconds, and they've got it down somewhere between 33 and 100 milliseconds that people make a decision about you. One of the reasons is that it's all to do with survival. It's all to do with we have to quickly make up our mind whether somebody is a friend or a foe. And this is the secret. The more similar somebody is to you, the safer they appear without you even realising it. Most of the information that we take in about other people is unconscious. It's all subliminal, not all, but a lot of it is subliminal. We don't even realise that we've got a bias or prejudice about somebody. And it's usually a little thing that is different to us that makes us suspicious or not trust them so much. So to communicate with other people well, one of the first things that you need to be thinking about is the impression that you're creating. Amy Cuddy was in town a couple of years ago. Did anybody in the audience get to see Amy? All right, so Amy did a TED Talk in 2012 about the power that is shown in your posture. And one of the main points that she shared was that your posture actually affects how you feel about yourself. It's not just the interaction that you have with other people, how they are with you, but it's also how you feel about yourself. So what she was explaining was the more expanded you are, the more relaxed, the more comfortable you appear to others, but also to yourself. So to maximise your communication with somebody else, to expand yourself and not to shrink, and at the same time not to overpower. 5 senses. So going back to what you may have been taught at school, so sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Now they're talking about us having 22 to 33 different senses, but what I want to make a point of is we are absorbing information all the time from everything around us, and that is influencing our response to the people around us. So when I was talking about first impressions, it's not just about what you look like and how you present, the colour of your clothes, what you wear, the expression on your face and your body language. It's also about the environment that it takes place. There's a lot of subliminal messages that come through with the colour of the room, the sound that's going on, or even if somebody has eaten or not eaten recently. They've done a lot of studies on courts. And I know there's a few people in the room here that will be interested in this. When judges pass their sentences, there's a really strong correlation that they're going to be more lenient if the hearing is in the morning than in the afternoon. So that seems to be to do with when people are fatigued or when they've eaten or not eaten and had something to drink, when they're feeling refreshed. So what I take from that is, if you want to influence somebody or persuade them, one of the things that you can do is try and do it in the morning, if people are more at their optimum than at the afternoon. So those difficult conversations or those things where you might be feeling a little bit anxious about it, it might be better done in the morning. And on the same note, a little tip that might be helpful is people are more likely to say yes when they've got a warm drink in their hands. In sales, for a long time, they've talked about something called the golden hour, and the golden hour is around about 10, 11 in the morning, when people have cleared their desks, they've kind of got their head around what's happening for the day, and they've had their first coffee. So these are kind of things to think about to do with first impressions. It's about thinking about planning the environment as well as what you are like. Second tip I've got for you is the frequency that you communicate with. There's one universal frequency that we all hear. I think a few of you would know it. Shout it out if you know the frequency we all hear.
What's in it for me?
Thank you very much. What's in it for me? Yeah. We all want to know why we should listen to somebody else. So if you want somebody to listen to you, you want to communicate with them, you've got to actually plan it. You've got to think, what would make them want to listen to me? What's in it for them? What would give them value? So my tip is, make it easy for them. What can you do to make it easier? In a minute, I'm going to be asking you about barriers. But when we're talking about making it easy, what do they respond to? If it's the workplace and the organisation, what are their drivers? What are their motivations? What are their values? What would make life easier for them? This Presentation is about face-to-face communication. So you've got the opportunity to go and visit them, to choose the time of day, to choose the place that you're going to be seeing them and make it easy for them. My third tip is about barriers and reducing the barriers that might be around. So the barriers that happen most frequently in Australia, in Perth, would be location and physical barriers and time barriers. But we've also got psychological barriers and mindset. I want you to have a think about the barriers that happen in your workplace. What are the things that get in the way of communication where you work? What is a constant problem for you? What I would like you to do is to share in the area around you or with your neighbour what some of the biggest barriers are that you face in your workplace that stop clear communication. Why is the miscommunication? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes. What are the things that get in your way in your area to do with communication? So 2 minutes, can you share what they are? Thank to get through some ideas and suggestions and some ways around some of these things that causes problems in the workplace, what interferes with clear communication. First of all, let's find out what the kind of big things are, and I want to hear from about 5 of you. So I'm going to start over in this side of the room. Somebody is brave enough to share one of the barriers that they come across. Why did you come here tonight? Hopefully for some, yeah? So barriers, what might be?
I was just telling Janet that one of the barriers we face in our building is all of our senior people are on a completely different structural floor. It's not a big step to go into the lift to go up, but it's a psychological barrier to communicating openly with them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That the building is set up so that the managers are on a different floor, and to go up there means taking a lift. There's a physical barrier there, and it's a psychological barrier too, isn't it? I heard that one yesterday. Yeah, all right, so being in a different floor, and ironically, it's also they are above, you are below. There's a very strong message happening there, isn't there? Yes, that's a common one. And people don't even realise that. But, I mean, part of that, I guess, would be there's conversations that need to happen that you might not want everyone to be exposed to. But yes, it does stop you from knowing what's going on. Richard Branson in the UK, one of his strongest things is the way that he moves around and comes into contact with lots of people. He picks up intel everywhere he goes because he is so available and so approachable. So in management, they talk about management by walking around and hearing what goes on. People are much more likely to tell you something small that might lead to something big early if you are more approachable. You know, the water cooler conversations, walking out to the car park in the hallway, that kind of a thing. So that's a great barrier, physical distance in that way. Can I have a barrier from this section of the room? Any barriers? Thank you.
Hi, split shifts.
Yes.
So the company I'm currently consulting to have split shifts, 7
Yeah.
till 3, 9 till 5, 10 till 6, 12 till 8, and 2 till 10. So trying to get a consistent message across all team members.
Yeah. And this is the split shift barrier, where you haven't got all staff in the same place at the same time. And with that crossover, there's going to be people that are fatigued and really not feeling very much like communicating. They're tired and fatigued, and they may never see each other. So there's that shift thing that happens a lot. Okay, that's a good one. Over here, barrier.
Yes, a barrier. I'm not talking about the client, and I've seen more and more is that people seem to want to communicate more on email rather than just getting on the old blower, the telephone, and talk it out and find a solution on the phone.
Yeah, okay, so the barrier being the choice of channel that you choose and the preference for email. And I think it's about 80% of most work is done via email, which is probably the least effective communication method you could possibly consider. You've got no body language and you've got no tone whatsoever. You're relying on words that could be misconstrued, you've got poor punctuation, and you've got different interpretations of words. So using email is convenient for the sender, but it's not necessarily convenient for the receiver. Certainly not as a primary method. So the choice of method that people choose can cause barriers because things are not as clear. Yeah? All right. Can I have one more barrier? Yeah.
Open plan.
Yes.
We have no offices.
Yeah.
The general manager doesn't even have an office. So if you need to have a private conversation, either you don't, or you have to book a room, and then people sit behind their little cubicle and whisper. So you assume they're talking about you.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's really terrible.
I'm just going to repeat that back. It was about the problems with open plan offices, with not being able to speak freely, and also when you overhear your colleagues whispering about something, your instant thought is to think they're whispering about me, and they're just trying to have a private conversation. So there's a lot of stress associated with open plan offices. Is anybody a fan of open plan offices? Yeah, you love them?
No,
I've just moved into a cubicle, so I love open plan in comparison to a cubicle.
Oh.
Everyone talks louder in a cubicle because they're shouting to the person on the other side, and
All right.
have a conversation.
This is a pro for cubicle, for open plan, not cubicles. Okay, so I think you mean cubicles with open plan, don't you?
It's a mix of both.
Yeah, all right. So the stress that's associated with open plan and not having privacy. I think also you've got to wait for your right time to have that conversation, to catch somebody, and there's stress with that. You might miss them, mightn't you? So you don't have that conversation, so people don't get the intel. One more barrier. Yeah.
I think time, availability. People are doing 100 things at the same time. They've got all their emails to get through. They've got meetings, so they don't take enough time. They don't make themselves available enough to communicate correctly.
So time pressures, everybody's working faster, harder, people not making themselves available. Great, all right. What I would like to do is split the room up and to get different sections, just thinking about what could possibly improve things to do with these barriers. All right, so over this side of the room, I'm going to ask you about shortness of time. When people are in a time hurry, there's pressures for time as a barrier. What could possibly, I get you all to talk to each other, and then I'm going to ask a couple of people to volunteer. What could you possibly do? Everybody's under short time pressure. Over here, what was your one? Open plan. What can people do about working in an open plan office to do with communication so that they're not disrupting other people, but also they're able to have a fairly private, confidential conversation when they need to? Are they the two issues? All right, this section's going to do that. And then this section, I didn't write it down and I forgot what to say. Oh, right, okay, so the choice of channel that they use. How can you encourage people to communicate differently? So can I get you to talk about what you could do to encourage that? That would be great. I'm going to give you about 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes, see how you're going. See what possible suggestions you can come up with some of those barriers. we're in a hurry, we're in a short amount of time. How do we improve that as a barrier? What are the things that could possibly be different? Thank you.
Yeah, so even just the shortest meetings, I found that setting a very, very quick agenda for it,
Yeah.
what the outcome's going to be.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a quick 15-minute standard chat somewhere rather than booking a meeting room, it's
Yeah.
actually what's the agenda going to be, what's the outcome, and I've found that people tend to accept that kind of meeting or give their time a bit more freely by doing that.
All right, so this is suggesting more stand-up meetings and having a mini agenda, even if it's just very, very short. It makes a difference because people know what they're there for. They get on track a lot quicker. Stand-up meetings are fabulous because we've also got the face-to-face going on, so they're becoming a lot more popular. I do occasionally do courses in meetings. I'm horrified how much money is wasted in meetings that really don't need to happen. Thank you for that. Was there one more about time? Thank you.
Can I just suggest, though, that when you have that quick stand-up kind of meeting, the importance of following up decisions that have been made after that meeting complements necessarily the importance of what you've said. So there's no confusion given all that other noise that actually happens in our busy daily life.
Great, so a short agenda and consolidation of actions. So following through on why you had that meeting, like what happened at that meeting, what was decided, what was agreed on. That has to happen too, otherwise it was a complete waste of time. Thank you. All right, over this area, open plan. What could you do to reduce that as a barrier? Because what it does is it stops people from feeling they can speak freely because it's open, and it also is very irritating because their voices carrying, they may not be aware of how much it's disrupting other people. Any suggestions here? Open plan. Thank you.
Well, if I have to have a conversation with somebody, I would like to use an email. May I please speak to you at 10 o'clock? May I please buy you a cup of coffee at 10 o'clock? Cafe next door to talk about such and such. May I please meet you at the cafe to buy you a cup of coffee to talk about XYZ at 10 o'clock?
Lovely. Okay, so you've chosen a neutral place and you've told them what it's about so that they're prepared. That sounds very efficient. Good. One more suggestion, open plan. Thank you very much, Walter.
There seems to be, well, from my working with open plan and the acoustics, there seems to be a minimum spacing, but I've yet to meet an open plan office where people are sufficiently spaced, simply because they're trying to save money. And by giving them the right spacing, then they're not saving any money with the open plan configuration. And the other thing is you have to spend extra money putting in all the services.
Yes.
So people quite often end up not being able to do their work.
Yeah, okay. All right, so spacing would be a solution, better, more appropriate spacing. All right, and over this end, I asked you about the mode of communication. How can you encourage multiple modes, not just email? What could you do? Thanks, Jill.
One of the things we suggested is that some people prefer to communicate by email. There's nothing wrong with that. It's about making the emails effective for them and you. So a suggestion was we actually put the subject matter in, you know how you have the subject line? Rather than making it rambling or too benign or too bland, we put, for your information, please review and approve, yes, no, urgent, FYI. At least it helps that communication process. If you know that you need to talk further, then you can take it offline. But at least it's giving them a bit of more information than just a rambling email with no direction.
Great, so that was having an email that's very directive and a lot more information in the subject line. Yeah.
I think the curse of emails is the CC line. We all get zillions of them. And I think that most of us will ignore an email if it's not addressed to us, if it's just CC. So I think I tend to address an email only to a person. If it needs to go to a couple of people, I'll send them individual emails directly. And I think people respect them and take notice of them more if they're directed to them.
Okay, so the use of CC. There is one thing that I've noticed with the different organisations I've worked with is that very few organisations come to some kind of collective agreement about what they're going to be doing about emails and what would be etiquette in their workplace. Very few come to those agreements, and there's